So my own story of understanding introversion came from my own experience. Does anybody ever do the Myers-Briggs? Yeah. So Myers-Briggs, so in my own schooling career, I went to law school, and I think I was always thought of myself as an extrovert. But when I read this book, Quiet, where a lot of this is from, if you're an introvert, you haven't read Quiet, or if you're an extrovert, you don't understand introverts, read Quiet. I read that book, and the first chapter, I really read this like 3 years ago, I started to cry. Because I was like, oh my gosh, this is why I feel like I don't fit in. But over time, I think that I had sort of masked as an extrovert, because when you go to school, so much of what you have to do is extroverted. And in our world, so much is extroverted, and we tend to value, our society does, extroverts more than introverts. So that's my own journey. And then Gina and I were with Anne in April. I'm pointing out an introvert who's like, don't. Why are you pointing me out? I know. So we went to Pamela Rigia and Ann Omen's unschooling retreat for just parents. And so being the ultimate introvert, I sat at the back table, one of the farthest where no one was at. And then at one point there was this sort of and it was everybody in the same room, like how many of us, Gina, 60, 70? So 70 of us in the room from 8 to 5 or whatever, and into the evening. So for an introvert, you know. Like,
wow.
So we ended up all sort of gravitating to this same table. And we didn't know it until we did some introductions, and we said, oh, we're the introverted table. And then other people were like, man, I want to be at that table, who were also introverts. And then they created a table behind us. And just so there was more comfort, I think, in being an introvert and being able to observe. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that was the irony of being and finding other introverts, and I think we all sort of connected with each other because we were like, yeah, this feels comfortable. We support each other. We can choose whether we're going to participate in activities or not. And so it was good. Anyway, so the first thing I want to say is that I really think about introversion and extroversion like many things, not as a binary, but a spectrum. And it's so you're not either or, my perspective. You're not, sometimes we will display what are typical extroverted characteristics, and sometimes extroverts will look like it. So there's a spectrum. So when I give some of the generalizations from some of the research and from the book Quiet, that's really what they are. They're generalizations and not meant to be taken as, if you don't have all these characteristics, you're not an introvert or vice versa. So introverts are estimated to be maybe half to a third every 2 or 3 people. What is that, a third? I'm not good with math, that's why I went to ask. Okay, anyway, 1 out of every 2 or 3 people. I should just read what's on it. I should make not an evaluative statement, but an observational statement. Some of us may not be aware that we're introverts, and in our broader society, the research that has been shown is that talkative people are rated as smarter, better looking, and more interesting. The speed and volume, not if you're super fast, but the faster you speak and the volume in your speak, this is why I did not have coffee. The volume, I'll slow down the speed. The volume of speech makes you considered to be smarter. And if you think about it, almost all of our institutions are built for extroverts. So in many ways, there's ways in which as introverts, we might think, gosh, this says, I don't know what's wrong, but it must be me. Right? We tend to internalize that. All right, so some broad generalization, and these are not judgments, they're observational. I'm learning from Kathy, I'm going to go buy that game. So introverts tend to be drawn to the inner world of thought and feeling. So we're focused a lot of times I talk about my introverted son as being in his head a lot. I'm often in my head thinking about things, observing things, meaning making. So I want to understand what's going around me and then make sense of it in my own experience and to make meaning out of that. The big thing that I learned that helped me to also understand I was an introvert is you recharge by being alone. Extroverts recharge, they create socialization and be with people in order to recharge. So that's often a distinction. And we need less stimulation to function well, in spite of the fact that I drink coffee. So we function well when there's less stimulation. And we tend to work more slowly and deliberately. Again, these are the broad generalizations and kind of on the ends of the spectrum. Extroverts are drawn to the external life of people and activities, going out, doing lots of things. That stimulation, they tend to plunge right in to events. Again, a generalization. They need to recharge when they don't socialize enough. So I have two people. I initially used to think Grayson, the younger child in our family, was more extroverted, and now I'm seeing as he's growing, he's spending a little bit more time at home, but he and Rob would always be out and be like, feel free to go. Go on out and do your thing. They need more stimulation to function well. They tend to jump into tasks, and they're really focused on what is. Like not making meaning, thinking about it, that sort of thing. That doesn't mean they're not deep, and that they're not thinking about things, but those are the broad generalizations. And in some of the research, extroverts tend to trade accuracy for speed. So if they're completing a task, they tend to do it more quickly. They tend to do a quick and dirty approach as opposed to really delving in. How many people do a lot of research before they do anything? Some people love to jump in if you read instructions versus that. Those are examples, and again, generalizations. Introverts tend to think before they act. They might sit a lot, wonder, imagine, think too much about the past, think about the future. I'm joking about that. Want to stay on a task longer. Any thoughts about that? Yeah.
I'm trying. It's the first time I'm exposed to this. I was trying to
Categorize?
Yeah, myself, my husband, some of my friends. Maybe I haven't thought about it for long enough, but it seems like we're all a mixture of all of these.
Yeah, possible. Right. That can be very true. So people tend to think of introverts as very shy, right? There's sort of these generalizations about introverts. So most people wouldn't tag me as an introvert, except for other introverts who might recognize right pieces of introversion. So I think we all have a mix of these things. We also adapt to our environments. As human beings and social beings, we tend to adapt and try to mold to that. So I think it can be hard. And what we'll talk a lot about is how do we create flexibility. The great thing about unschooling is we have the capacity and flexibility for what people need at different points. So it may be someone who's more extroverted needs downtime, and so we have the opportunity to create that. Maybe the introvert is so passionate about something that they're ready to go out and all they want to do is talk with their friends about Minecraft, right? So I think if you think about it that way, that unschooling really allows us that flexibility to say what is needed in this moment in time, or what am I seeing in terms of what's needed over time for someone? Or maybe what patterns am I seeing that maybe I'm not recognizing about how much time someone might be alone, or the fact that someone needs to go out. Does that help a little bit? Okay. So from some of the research, I thought this was interesting, is that because introverts listen, they tend to listen quite a bit, not that others don't, again. As leaders, they're not necessarily interested in sort of being the center or dominating in any way social situations. So they're more likely to really pay attention and listen to other people's suggestions. This is sort of for adults, because we're talking about both ourselves and then children. So if they have a team, they're more likely to solicit and get input and take that in from lots of other people. This doesn't mean that extroverts can't do that, but in terms of leadership in broad strokes. And they're really good when they're working with team members who like to take initiative, because they don't need to, not control, but they people who take initiative, then they will support people who take initiative. Extroverts, if you're not paying attention, can risk losing others' ideas because often they will talk more. They kind of want their name or stamp on the project. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not making judgments. They also have a natural ability to inspire and get better results from people who are more passive. We have, initiators, risk takers, those who are more passive, and extroverts tend to be able to inspire and bring that out. Okay, that's really small. I thought about taking this whole slide out, but I'll upload it once the internet is working to the group so you can look at it. So this was an interesting piece to me because it's about how we interact in groups. We're in groups so often because we're social animals. And what was interesting, and I think this, to me, kind of the bottom line piece that I'll talk about the last one, is that basically they did research where they asked people to solve a task on their own, and alone, individuals, about 14% gave the wrong answer. And if the individual was then in a group, in this research that they did, and all the group members gave the wrong answer, those individuals in this testing, 41% gave the wrong answer. So there's this way when we're in groups and that we tend to want to conform to the group. But what happens is, when we're in a group activity that's giving the wrong answer and we think it's the right answer, our amygdala, the fight, flight, freeze response, right, the threat detector, is very active because we don't want to go against the group. And so we're in this state of sort of heightened, threatened perception of threat. And so when we don't conform to the group with the wrong answer and we give the right answer, we're often much more fearful. Has anyone ever been in that situation? Like probably all of us have been in a situation at some point where everyone's going in one direction and you're like, that is the wrong answer. And then you're like, what am I going to do? And anxiety comes up. I think it's just one way in which we can understand how group dynamics occur. Because the other thing that we'll talk about with introverts is the role they play in terms of survival of the group. So I thought that was, maybe I'm just a nerd about some of the brain science pieces, so I'll just move on from that, but I thought that was interesting. And these are some of the research that kind of informs the pieces on introversion and extroversion. How many of you have had babies who are high reactive, highly sensitive? React a lot to noise, lots of things.
Tags on their clothing.
Oh, yeah, taking tags off all the time. Yeah. Other things, what are other reactions?
Sound.
Sound. Other people? Bright light. Others?
I had a friend whose daughter reacted really badly to sand.
Sound. Yeah. Yeah, any other examples? Smells.
The way food looks.
Yeah, there we go. So, they did a study of 500 children from 4 months old to 12 years, which is a really interesting longitudinal study. And so they were testing for high reactivity and low reactivity. And so the babies, heard recorded voices, balloons popping, all those kinds of things. About 20% were high reactive, which tends to correspond with the number of introverts that they think there are in our society. 40% were low reactive and 40% were in the middle. So the high reactive babies were more likely to have developed into serious, careful personalities. For those of you who have high reactive babies, have you seen any of that happen over time if you have older ones?
What was the reaction?
High reactive?
To what?
Whether it's to sounds, noises.
So what was the...
They tended to be more serious. They developed into more serious personalities.
Serious?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Careful, the characteristics that are
Yes.
associated with introversion. So you also said that.
Yes.
Yeah. So Martell is 14. He was very reactive to many things. He's very serious. Low risk. He's the one who tells all his friends, that is the stupidest thing I have ever seen you do. Right? Like he's the, why are we taking risks? Don't do that person. And so The low reactive tend to become more relaxed and confident, which are sometimes characteristics associated with extroverts. They also measure, heart rate, blood pressure, the finger temperature. All of those they think are regulated by the amygdala, which detects threats. And those high reactive babies also tended to have more alert attention. So scanning the environment, paying attention to what's going on, taking in a lot of information. Those are the babies that tended to have more introverted as they grew up, becoming more introverted. And if we think about our species, in all animal species, I think scientists have found that over 100 animal species tend to have introverts and extroverts because we all play a role. That's diversity within our species plays a role in our survival. So the role of the observers, if we think about the introverts, the high reactives, are to scan the environment for threats because they're very attuned to what's going on in the environment. So they talked about it in terms of grazing animals, who are prey animals. And so they tend to be the ones who look up a lot and scan the environment. They are the ones who call the alert sound. And so in our society and in the animal kingdom, the observers are meant to detect threats. So high reactive babies, if you think about it, the role they play is to detect threats. So if we think about issues of anxiety, some of the things we've talked about in some of the other sessions, some of that may be also from this place of, I'm here to detect what's going on. That's my role in the group. The role of the actors and extroverts, they tend to have multiple sex partners, they hunt, reproduction, they tend to die at a younger age because they take more risks, but because they reproduce more prolifically, then they tend to, that's their role in sort of the animal kingdom, or what might be for those who have multiple sex partners in the human animal kingdom, reproduction. So if you think about that high reactivity and the brain activity, it kind of makes sense that we've got everyone, and all of us have a role to play. Any thoughts about that? Cool. So let's talk about unschooling. I said this a little bit before. That choice and flexibility, we also have the ability to create spaces. If you think about how many think you have as introverts, spend a lot of time at home, do they really want to be like in their own spaces, right? They want to sort of cocoon. I think about it, go in the cave and spend time in the cave, recharge. They might do an activity and then need a couple days to recover, right? That'll be me after this event, right? We're all kind of, those of us who are introverts are probably like, hey, I think I've about reached my limit. We're just needing to, anyway. Cocoon. So we can create a space for a range of reactions and support, and a range of interactions. It can be challenging when you live in smaller spaces where you have one who maybe needs a lot of noise and stimulation or creates a lot of noise and stimulation. And then another, if you have more than one, if you're obviously more than one person in a family, we might have introverted children and we're extroverted, vice versa. So I think those are really critical things for us to think about, is to notice the patterns, what are they needing. Sometimes they develop over time, and we have to understand, what's happening over time. Support the ways in which they engage in the world. So we talked about quitting yesterday, and someone in the room yesterday, I can't remember who it was, said they have one, Amy, I think it was you, one daughter who goes from thing to thing, right? Yeah. And then you have another. This may not correspond to introversion or extroversion. One is like dive in. This is the thing I am doing. Right? So you have the ability to support this. I'm going to go from thing to thing, which often we might think of as quitting and not sticking to something in a broader societal perspective.
And expensive.
Yeah, and it could be expensive. Let's look for free options to try new things. And then others who just want to do that one thing. So Martel is similar. He tends to be more introverted, and he will dive in. He will read for like 8 hours Harry Potter fan fiction, and all he wants to do is finish, whatever chapters have been uploaded. Grayson, he will do 20 different things in a day, and so we never know what's coming next. Okay, what want to do now? So I think that's the value of what we're trying to do in creating those spaces for kids. We've also found we have a fairly large unschooling community in Tucson, and we have some of the teens now who want to go to school because, and they tend, when I look at who those are, they tend to be more extroverted because they really want that social space. And most of them aren't going because of academics. They're really going because they want more structured social activity and a broader connection of friends beyond the 18s that they've known since they were 5. So, so I think those are some of the things to just think about as we're unschooling. But I think the challenge, I know when I talk to parents about extroversion and introversion, sometimes there's a challenge when you have a very introverted child. Right? Yeah.
It can be a challenge if there's a mismatch between the parent and the child, where the parent's more extroverted and feels like they're going to suffocate alone all the time. It's like, I need to get out. And then there's a child who's like terrified to get out and just needs to be alone. That conflict of interest is very, very challenging.
Yeah, it is. Like, that is so real.
Yeah.
It's real on the opposite end, too. Very extroverted child, and you're an introverted parent, and you're like, I cannot be in a group any longer.
That's what,
But they're like 6 hours at the park. Right? So both of those things, when there's a mismatch. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's the same if you're an introverted parent and you have an introverted child. It's not a scenario you empathize too much. And as a parent, you're inclined to not challenge your child because you don't want them under the pressure that you feel.
Right.
Because you know that it's going to be difficult. But you don't want your child to struggle. So then you don't let them go out. Because sometimes if they did go out, they would learn things and they would be challenged and they would be able to grow. Because you feel that the safe space is the better place. So I think this works both ways because it's been next week.
Yeah.
Was there another question?
So how do people deal with those challenges? I mean, talk about it. What have you been doing? If you're not the same, if you have different needs, how have you all been working with that?
my youngest is extroverted and wants to bounce from thing to thing. Then spend whatever for the guitar, and then it's ice hockey, and then and it's hard for me because I am singular focused. I'm very introverted and love alone time. And compromising with him about it, he would like to get out every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God. So I have to push myself more toward the extroverted, and he has to, in some ways, be more introverted because he doesn't have a car. So he's dependent on me. And I feel sad at times that if I were extroverted and we would be out and about, he'd be so pleased. And my older son can just hang out at home, do his deep diving. He is happy and content there. And I'm happy and content watching him because I completely relate because we're both introverted. So it's a compromise. And I sometimes wish, it could just be fluid with my younger son, but he's extroverted and I'm not. That is not my default. I can be extroverted, but ultimately I want to be home really doing that deep work.
Right.
And he's like, can we go to the park?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Is that Julie? Was that you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing Julie because I'm kind of coming at it from the exact opposite. Whereas, I think I'm a mix of both, but as I've gotten older, I think I've become more extroverted. And I really like to be out and doing things. But my 2 older kids, the baby doesn't really seem to care too much, but the 2 older kids really love being home so much. And it's a very special occurrence for them to really want to go out and do something. They're 4 and 6. But I think I'm trying to parse out, where is it my limitness? Or where is it that you're different? And then where is it that society is telling me that getting out and being extroverted is better? Because I think that's a message. Like you said, most of society is set up for extroverts.
Yeah.
And I was raised really traditionally, and so I kind of get, these fears start coming in, well, they're not going to learn how to socialize with people, and they're not going to learn, they're not going to make lasting relationships because they want to be home all the time. So I have to kind of sift through those fears.
Yeah. And that sifting is really critical. And talking about what you talked about, if we were judged for being introverted and we have an introverted child, those messages, though our own experiences as children, are going to come up as triggers, right? And we're going to project not only society's expectations, but also our own experiences onto what they're doing and trying to navigate that. And so being able to parse out, and you talked about, you're aware that this is what you're doing and that you need to balance that with your past experiences and with what's happening right now. So that's a really powerful tool, is to say, okay, where does this come from? And to also take out, what society say, because we prefer, as a society, extroverts. I mean, those are the ones who allotted, people who stay in their focused areas. We might talk about them sort of in a certain way, but if you look at those who in media and in our society who are sort of held up, it's like the quitters. There are some movies about those who stay in their rooms and focus and, are that focused on a particular thing, but much more it's about extroverts. Yeah.
I have a hard time because we're all introverts, the whole family.
Yeah.
But they're introverts, but then they're like, well, I want to make friends, but I don't want to go out to make friends. And how do I make friends? Because nobody wants to go out and do that. So I guess I'm really struggling with that, especially now, because they're really feeling it. And we've moved a lot, so that makes it harder as well.
Yeah.
So not that I'm giving any insight, I guess I'm just asking for some insight.
Right. Yeah. So have you just recently moved? Or have you been stable for a little bit?
We've been stable for a couple of years. Well, we've been in the same state for the past 11 years, but different hospitals. So
And how old?
13 and 15.
So they're really at that age where that need to.
And we're really now, there's no kids. They're all moved off, and it's an older neighborhood. Then we go, well, we lived where we used to live, but that didn't work out as well.
Yeah.
So I'm really struggling with that because I'm not an outgoing person, but I feel the same way. I love it when people come over, and I can be really sociable, but for me to go out and see, it's not like that anymore. I wasn't when I was younger.
Do others have thoughts about that? I know we're going to continue in a second. Or do you want to?
Well, kind of, first of all, where do you live?
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oh.
And they've gone to different activities, and then when we got into the quitting, well, I really don't want to do that. I didn't connect with anybody, so therefore I don't want to continue with that. So I guess I've always been throwing things out there for them. Well, let's try this. Do you want to try this? How about this? And it's and then it's like they'll sit there by themselves on their whatever, and everybody else will connect and socialize, but they want to sit by themselves in a corner, but they want to be friends with people. And I'm challenged.
I think there are some ways in which introverts desire really deep connection.
Yes.
And so that the challenge for introverts is, I don't want to go to a cocktail party. Have you ever done speed networking? It's a nightmare. It's like speed dating. It happens in the university where I work, and I'm like, this is awful for me. But I do it, but there's ways in which what I want is to sit down and have a really deep conversation about something.
Exactly. Nobody else is.
Right. And so kids are socialized, we're socialized to do that surface level, because when you're in those situations, that's what we're socialized to do. How's it going? Blah, 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 whatever it is. Some people thrive on that, love that. Then they're able to make connections quickly. In some ways, it might even help to just talk about the fact that what they want is something deeper. And to acknowledge the needs that they have, which is to have a deeper connection with people and not just a surface connection. That doesn't mean to me extroverts are surface people. What it means to me is that in social situations, they much more easily move about the room. But I think if maybe you could talk to them about that, to sort of honor and affirm that need for a deeper connection, And even say it can be hard when you're in the first time you try something because it's all going to be surface.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that they're not going to go to one thing and not go again. It could mean that they do that, but just that they have an awareness of their own internal sort of makeup or needs that might not be met initially. Not to say that means you have to go 4 times, but just like this is what it's like, this is what you need. Pay attention to that. Is that even ask them? Is that you think what's going on for you? That sort of thing. Let's see. Yeah. So we have here, here, and here. We're gonna just go. Yeah. Is yours directly addressing that?
Well,
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
well, I maybe you can glean off this. Our son is 15. He's clearly introverted, and one of the things that worked for us is we have to nudge him a little bit. And case in point, this week, there's nobody here, but we're like, go to this session, try this session, and one was like, oh, it's horrible, but I think one of the things that we've observed is, like, we travel a lot. And we were in Italy, and we were like, oh my God, this is great. We're in Rome, or we're in Florence, and don't you love this, don't you love this? After about 2 weeks, he was like, I've had enough of this. Every city looks the same. I don't care anymore about these old buildings. And what we recognized was, okay, you need a day. You need your time. And that was a lesson for us to go, you need time to go, there's good Wi-Fi, go on YouTube all day, sit and have that time. And what we got back from that, and I think to your point and to what you actually just said, was really engaging in dialogue about their time, their space, and what they need. He is everything you said up there about introverts, nailed him. I mean, he's deep. He wants to have meaningful dialogue. He wants to have these conversations. So I think what we've tried to do is engage him to say, look, we'll give you the space you need. He's a photographer, he loves editing pictures. He's in his room right now editing pictures of my videos. Good. But you know what, this morning he got out and went to a session, he met a few people. So we just sort of find that balance. I recognize the challenge. We're literally in the process of moving. So we're up against a whole new set of friends and things like that, actually here in New Jersey. But what we're trying to do is give them space where, hey, try it. Doesn't work? Okay. Let's talk about why it didn't work, maybe why it did. Maybe we can do something better next time. But it's that dialogue, I think, that really sort of, because we were 3 years ago, what do you mean you don't want to go out? What do you mean you don't like this? What do you mean? I don't get that. And it was, we learned from him how to be better in a situation to give him space, to allow his introvert self to be the introvert self it needs to be.
Which I feel that's what we've been doing, but now it's like, they want their space, but they're not meeting the other kids, because, I've exhausted all the...
Do they have online friends?
Yes, they do. But
My son is really happy with his online
I
friends.
know, and I thought
My
mine
son's
were
online.
too, but now they're not.
Yeah. They may be right on the verge of, pushing themselves a little bit more.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Just talking about it to sort of like gear up. Okay.
Yeah.
We just need a bit of encouragement.
And I think there's a piece about puberty
Yeah.
that is that drive.
Yeah.
I mean, if we think about the reproductive drive, right? That drive to begin to try to establish those kinds of relationships that, I think is very, that's what I've observed in Martell, something that's very different. It's like his drive to move out and to connect. It doesn't mean he's looking for a partner or a romantic partner, but what I have seen is his willingness to engage more and want to be out in the world more, and it seems to be a very different me than what I saw before.
Maybe that's what's going on, because they seemed perfect with that.
Right.
Oh, I've got a friend here, and a friend, all over, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I got woken up at 2 in the morning last night because it's like, which is fine. We get up and talk. But,
Yes.
okay.
So we were here in the Moran Pool.
I can totally resonate, and I said some of this in the last session. My daughter's very introverted, we will have all that dialogue. And we had a very long conversation Saturday night with her father and me and her, and she really voiced, I feel disconnected from some of my friends, because some of her friends were her old school friends, and she's like, and I'm really torn whether or not I still want to be friends with them, because I feel I want more. I want more of a connection. And she's almost 11. She's very articulate. And she said, so I'm really torn, Mom. I don't know what to do. And I don't know whether or not I should still be friends with them. And that's one issue. And we were always the house. Everybody was at our house, which I loved. And I love all of her friends. But there's a lot of comparison now that we're not in the system. So she's feeling like, you know what, I feel pretty disconnected. And I feel competition, and I feel comparison, and I don't like that. I want to be really deep, and I don't know how to get there with them. And she doesn't want to take the step. She's here. She did engage in a bunch of stuff, but now she's like, yeah, I'm kind of done. I'm done. She's in her room. She loves screen time, and she's creating these movie maker videos. And you know, while I was in the first session, she's like, oh, I did. And she's so excited about it, and you know, she did come down for a little bit, and then she's like, oh, I'll go back up. I said, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's like I struggle with the playmate, you know, because it's just me. I have 2 stepdaughters, but they're grown. So I really struggle with keeping her engaged and keeping her, you know, she loves theater and singing, so she's in that. That's only a small period of time, so I'm trying to create a bigger section of that with a theater group that we're in. But besides that, I'm like, what else?
And maybe it doesn't have to be what else.
Yeah, but I guess she wants more friends, and then she doesn't want to do any of, like, she was really happy because Marie actually came up to her yesterday, and she said, I don't want to be the one to go up to somebody. I like it when people approach me, and she said I was really excited because I felt very connected to Marie, and you know, but it's like, that's not always the case. Yeah. So I just, I don't know, I guess I have to slow down.
In our family, she's the one who makes all our friends, because all the rest of us are introverts.
Yeah.
And like, we are so appreciative of that, but we've also had to learn, because if we don't initiate, we just get extroverts coming to us, which is fine. We like extroverts, but we also really crave that introverted connection as well with people who are like us in certain ways. So we've learned that we really, you know, we've learned we should really make more initiation, and that's kind of what spurred us and motivates us, because we like the deeper connection. And extroverts can be deep too, but it's, you know, when you're similar in certain ways, it's really cool to have those relationships in your life as well. Yeah.
And we're all introverted, so
Yeah.
I have to push myself to, you know, be in situations that will have that deep connection, you know, to find nonviolent communication. So that puts me in that space, so that's good. But she doesn't always want to be in that space, even with, you know, like adults and stuff. Not
Maybe
always,
that's a
sometimes.
growth thing. 'Cause
What's that?
Maybe that's a growth thing, because as you get older, you're willing to put yourself out more. Where the teenagers,
Yeah.
it's just so difficult right now.
Yeah, so I guess it's just, what would you suggest to that? Just tolerance, patience, let it be what it is?
I think I would notice what are my own fears. Like, what are my fears about it? Because there's some anxiety there around, I'm not doing it right, I'm not doing enough, she's not getting what she needs. All of us are always in that process of trying to figure out what we need. And that's what she's doing. And often we want to fix it really quickly because we don't want to see them in distress. And yet some of that, I'm not saying prolonged distress is a way of learning, but we can't fix some of these things. Maybe they don't need to be fixed. They're not fixing. You know, but we need to create the space for them to talk to us, for us to talk to each other about that, to just acknowledge that that's the real experience, to explore, to be in dialogue, to just really open it up, to say this is what it sounds like is going on for you. Because often what we need is someone to help us make meaning of that experience.
That's what I do, but sometimes it still just feels like, is this it? Is this all we're supposed to do? You know, like,
Sometimes that's it.
you know, because
But if
that
you-
is what we do.
But if you think about that relationship, I think about my own childhood, and probably many of us, where that's not what our parents did, right? Our parents didn't do that. So how powerful is it that she can say anything like that to you.
And she'll always say, Mom, my friends, they would never say anything like this. I'm like, oh, that's sad. You know,
Yeah.
like a lot of her friends will come and go, what's this thing? And they told me. And I'm like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
But I engage it, and that's why my house is the house, because everybody can pretty much do what they
Right. They're free. They can be who they are. They can express things that they can't express in their own homes. Like, that is freaking amazing.
It is.
I mean, that's right. We may not see it as amazing. That is amazing. That when we can do that, and it's not. We don't see what we do. So I don't mean to say like other people are not good or not extraordinary, right? That's not it. But to create space is really powerful in our world.
It is. I guess I look at, and I don't want to monopolize this, but I look at, okay, but those were her school friends, which she may be moving away from. So now, okay, now there's this space of, what's this going to look like now? You know, and we are very connected, which I'm so grateful for. But it's just that uncertainty of how to navigate this new phase.
Yeah. And that uncertainty is powerful. It's a powerful place to be. Uncertainty and not knowing, and to sit with that, ooh, so uncomfortable. And yet, like, that's what she needs. That's what you need.
Yeah.
It's just to be in that uncertainty. We don't have to know all the answers. Because it's her experience, and we're here to support that, to help talk about it, to maybe push when they need to be pushed a little bit, to talk about what kind of pushing do you want or need. Like, that's powerful. That's it. Yeah. Let's come. Are you okay? Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
I just have a question because I have a 4-year-old and like I don't know how to like whole thing about supporting her because I feel like I didn't think she was an extrovert or I didn't really think much about it. But then my sister, because she growls at me, she's like that's a sign of an introvert. Just doesn't she gets overwhelmed and so she growls or she'll bite. Oh, she'll bite or she just feels like ah.
Right.
You know,
Like
she
protection.
Yeah, she was very like, and so as a parent, like, I don't know, I grew up, well, that's disrespectful, so now it's like, okay, how do I, even like ballet class, for example, like, she does not want to go to ballet class, she loves ballet class, but so what I do with gymnastics, I just sit there, and then eventually she goes in, on her own terms, but I just don't know how to, like, with other people coming up to her and, like, how do I help her and help them, so they don't get a slap, because they're like, it's weird because, like, certain people, like, just grab her and kiss her and make kind of push past it, like, with her, like, but then other people grab her, kiss her, and she punches them. So it's like, there's definitely something going on, but I don't know, like, how do I don't know what to do. So,
Yeah.
Just before you answer, we have a very similar situation at Margot, who's 4, where when she meets new people, one of the things that she does is she sticks her tongue out and like often will start like licking me because she gets so uncomfortable in those situations. And I mean, we always tell her that she doesn't have to, like, she never has to hug or kiss anyone if she does not want to. That's never something that she's forced to do. And, we tell her, we talk about, being polite and, it's polite to say hello and goodbye when you meet someone or leave someone, but pick a way that you feel comfortable doing that, and usually she'll decide to wave and not speak. But we talk about it a lot with her, and I don't know if that's what you would suggest, but I just want you to know, Margot does something so similar to that, and
thank you
I
for
feel
the
you.
connection.
And I want to make a quick suggestion, or just put some tools out there if you choose to use them or not.
That's why I'm asking.
Is that evolutionarily, children are not designed to be away from their parents and in these group ballet, gymnastics, school, any of those kinds of things at age 3, at age 4. Like, they are still really just babies at that point. Clearly not attached to your breast 24/7 kind of babies, but
Or they might be.
or they might be. That's true. Like, yep, no, absolutely. So I think that as a society, we're so into pushing children away and forcing independence. And there are ways for her to do ballet and do gymnastics in her own home and in her own way through YouTube, through DVDs, all that kind of stuff, that if it's the ballet that she's into, you can do that kind of thing. I heard this really cool quote one time, and I don't remember who said it, I'm clearly going to mangle it, but it talks about how it's the nature of dependence to become independence. That's what it is. And being angry with dependence, because it's not yet independence, is the same as being angry with winter because it's not yet spring. Like, it's coming. It's going to be there. And it sounds like, we divide the world into introverts and extroverts, but sometimes it's just children who need a little bit more connection. She's not ready to let go. And you say she goes in on her own terms, and that's great, but keeping her, going the opposite direction, keeping her closer, keeping her more connected, and constantly having that conversation of, this is all about you, whatever your needs are right now. One of my pet peeves, there's a million, of society is how we force this. All her friends are taking gymnastics, so she must want to do it, or she must need to do it. Well, gymnastics will always be there,
So that's the thing with, because like I do ballet videos at home, and she has no interest in it.
Oh, she doesn't want it.
But
So it's a social thing.
Yeah, she like gets anxious, but she wants, like, I noticed that she likes to be in control.
Yeah.
Even her teacher said to me, she would get angry at girls for helping her. Like she dropped an eraser, and the girl picked it up for her, she would get mad.
Right.
And what the teacher told me she noticed with Casey is that she doesn't want you to take her ability away
Yeah.
from her.
Right.
So it's like a control thing.
Yeah.
But, so it's like, how do I get, because there's no way I can control her. You know what I mean? Like,
She's your firstborn.
like she has that control, which I get, because like, she probably got it all from me. So, but like, I'm working, I'm trying to be different, because I see what I've done and what I, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Don't think bad to yourself though. Like, seriously, she's only 4. There's nothing you've done.
Yeah, well, there's just well,
You've not screwed this up.
Yeah, you haven't screwed it up, because we all screw ups, but like, that are learning, and we're all, but I just, like, what do you do when the person comes on and you're afraid that they're gonna get hit?
So this is what I would say, what I would do, because Grayson went through a period as well. It usually corresponded when I was more controlling with him and he would lash out at other people. That was my own thing, I noticed after a while. But what I would often do is I would, before the person came up, to grab, or whatever it might, their version of, I want to hug, blah, 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 that sort of thing, is I would just say, Grayson does better if he has space. I would just name the need for him.
Yeah.
Because she can't name what the need is, so all she's doing is to the best of her ability. So she may be more comfortable or less comfortable with individuals. You said you never know when she might hit someone because they've hugged her, and then the person before it would be okay. So
Well, I
she,
do know who they are, like, I can tell you people.
Oh.
There's a very clear, I know who's gonna get swatted.
Right.
There's not. But I don't know
So,
why.
right, and it doesn't matter
You don't
why.
need to know why.
Right.
Put yourself between them. So
Yeah.
that her space is protected.
Right, and I would just, that's what we would do, either step between, especially if they're younger, step between and just say, Grayson needs a space. Grayson, this is what Grayson wants, and so, because they're communicating in the best way they can, which is, I'm going to hit you because you're not respecting your space. Right?
And
It's a very clear
the kid who's
communication.
doing it or the adult who's doing it is not trying to be that.
Well, I think that they're doing it out of love, actually.
Right,
But, so it's like, how do you not be insulting? Because I didn't even know that she was an introvert. I was thinking, she's just upset, like, I don't know. Except that as I'm learning, like, then my sister called me and said, I figured your daughter out, like, what? And then, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't think stepping between them and saying Grayson needs his space is at all disrespectful or unloving to the other person. It's just stating
The need.
Stating a need that Grayson at the time wasn't able to verbalize.
And helping model for when they.
Yeah, and model it.
Like,
It's okay to say I need my space.
yeah.
Yeah, or to other adults who want to invade. With my son, it was adults. They want to go and hug him. He didn't even know them. And I'd be like, yeah, he'd really prefer, not hug right now, maybe later, and something like that, because really that's their space. Other little kids don't know. Adults should know, but they don't know. But you can be the spokesperson until she plants that.
And then what would you do about the ballet thing? Like there's clearly a desire, but then there's the anxiety of the change of here to there.
Yeah.
Thing, the
So I guess I just figure out
until she's older, and then
what is it that she loves about ballet? What is the part? Is it the class? Is it the teacher? Is it the other kids?
Is it the studio?
Is it the studio
physical
with the
space?
mirrors or whatever? Because if you're saying it's not the ballet, she won't do it with a DVD at home. So it's not the physical.
but it's funny because she'll do
movement.
ballet at home, but just not with someone
Oh,
else.
okay.
Like she'll as soon as she takes the stuff she's learned and she comes home and she's doing PAs and she really loves it. But if I put her and I showed her a DVD, she'd cheer on my strings.
So could you go back to, in the class, what's the issue in the class, in the ballet class?
Well, it's just the issue for me was when we go there, the teacher, they need to start the class.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so they need they have a routine or whatever. So the teacher ends up having to physically take her, and that's fine because she likes the teacher. She has this she's trying to, she wants the teacher's attention, really, I feel like. And but it's just, I don't know, it's just very uncomfortable. It's
So it's uncomfortable for you.
I guess it's uncomfortable for me.
Okay, so it's uncomfortable for you that she doesn't automatically get up and the teacher has to come and get her.
Yeah, because I'm like, I guess it's more uncomfortable for me.
Right. So the teacher's okay.
It's nothing to do with my dog.
There you go.
All right.
Right? Yeah, so because the teacher knows, I need to come and bring you here. This is what works for your daughter. I'm going to bring you into the class. It's uncomfortable for you because what you'd prefer is if she just went into the class when the teacher called the time.
Yeah.
But there's something about that connection with the teacher that does something for her. And the teacher's okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. She's connected to you and she's connected to the teacher. So don't be angry at the dependence because it's not yet independence. Let her have those connections. If you're okay, you bring her there and she's totally fine, and then the teacher walks over and says, you coming with me? It's time to start class, and they go off together. It's just transferred the connection. You're her safety, and now this teacher's her safety, and then the teacher will bring her back to you, and you're her safety again.
And if you think about introversion, for those of us who are introverts, when you go to an unknown social situation, what do you want?
Yeah, someone
To
to
do
guide
these
you
couple
in.
things,
Yeah.
like we're gonna go together, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want a safe person to help you get into that social situation. So in many ways, what she's doing is exactly what she needs. I need somebody next to me that I feel safe with that is going to take me into the group. And that's when I'm going into a totally unknown situation. I will stay in the back. I will watch what's going on. I will observe all of that. But when I have someone else, it's so much easier to enter the group. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a quick thing, because one thing that I have discovered recently in the past couple of years is that my oldest, who's extremely outgoing and vocal and energetic or whatever, is actually introverted. And that really, really surprised me. And just changing the way I'm thinking about how, in the past couple of years, and I'm just wondering if anyone else has had that, a really outgoing, vocal introvert that seemed strange to me, but I think it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, one of the first conferences I went to, that you were there, I went to your talk, and you had the list up, and I was like, huh. It was really shocking to me, because she's so, I do cross country, she fences, and she fences at multiple clubs. She's not afraid. We were living in California for a month, and she's like, find me a club. And, for a month, find me a club. And we would go fence with these kids. Now she's got friends in California. But she
still needs to
Recharge alone.
recharge alone. She still gets really snappy if you invade her space. She's not like. So does anyone else have that, or introverts supposed to be quiet?
So this is what I would, do you
Calm down.
perceive me as quiet?
Do I perceive you as quiet?
Yeah.
Not really.
So I'm an introvert. This is the thing that I think struck me the most about the book Quiet when I read it, was what she wrote. She's an introvert who's a lawyer. And what she wrote was, when an introvert is passionate about something, they will be all about it.
Yeah.
So I'm passionate about what we talk about here, and that is big for me. Like, I want to talk about it, I want to talk about adultism, I want to talk about blah, blah, blah. All that stuff, you can keep me going for a long time if I'm talking about what I'm passionate. That's who she is. She is so passionate about fencing. She is outgoing because that drives her, and that's what she needs. Yeah, and you had your hand up.
I've always thought I was an extrovert, but hearing this, I think I'm an introvert. I just crave deep connection with a lot of people. But so, and in a social situation, I have this saying, like, I'm going to be in the corner of the room if it's not with like one person having a really intense conversation. But if I'm alone for too long, I feel like I do need to recharge it. So it's like, I feel like I'm a weird combination, but I think that I'm more introvert than I ever realized. I've always had myself so incredibly outgoing and
I read a great article about introversion and creativity and self-expression, and that in our introverted space where we're doing that deep dive and we're loving what we do, then there comes a time where we're like, we want to share.
Yeah.
So naturally, we're going to want that connection with the outside world, but it still can be scary, and we have to push ourselves out of the comfort zone of that cocoon.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
Oh, I just was going to agree. I'm sorry. I was just going to agree that I thought I was an extrovert until this presentation.
My oldest, like what you were saying, my oldest was probably around 11, where she started saying things like, what these kids talk about is dumb. Like, I don't want to have conversations with these people. She has one really good friend who luckily lives right across the street from us now, but like, when she's on the cross-country team, which she loves running, she's really good at it, and she'll have conversations on the bus or whatever, but she comes home and she's drained because just the little teenage snarky and the communicating in text and whatever, she comes home and she's like, ugh, like just put the phone away, put this away. I don't want to just do it anymore.
But yet my daughter would be extremely extroverted when she's in theater.
Right.
And the first time I saw her perform, she didn't tell me like all the different roles she had. So my husband and I are watching her, and all of a sudden she's in this scene, she's in this scene, she's in this scene. And we're like, oh, who is this kid? You know, like seriously, we were like shocked. And I'm like, you never told us. She goes, yeah, I'm not as surprised you am. That's great. Oh my God.
Oh, I was just thinking about the environment because most people who are unschoolers are going to be more like deep thinkers because they're already questioning society, period. And like, I'm thinking like it seems like so people who think deeper are going to have kids who think deeper. And like, so, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how much of it is environmental versus like their nature. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I guess, my question.
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer that necessarily. I mean, I meet unschoolers and families who are a mix of everything. You know, extroverts, introverts. Often, you know, some parents who didn't decide on schooling from a very early time get to it because the child is demanding something different. And that's how they get there. Whether they're extroverted or introverted. So I've kind of seen a range of all sort of temperaments and personalities in unschooling, though the willingness to step outside the box, I think, happens. But yeah. You want to?
No, I was just going to confirm. I mean, I thought I was an extrovert for years, and I'm clearly becoming more and more of an introvert as I age. But when I'm out and I look social and people, they find out, I say I'm an introvert and they're like, that's crazy, you're so social. And you're so, that's because I've taken my time to energize myself away from people. And I've recharged. And I'm putting myself mostly, it's a choice to be in a situation and I'm ready to go. So you're not seeing me in a place of when I'm not ready to deal. Because I've taken care of myself. I mean, of course, there's those times where you have to adult and do it anyways.
Don't make me adult.
But yeah, so
So I wanted to talk a little, we talked about this Daniel Siegel, who I talked about, whatever day it was, some of his work, he talks about creating a feeling of feeling felt. That as parents and in our relationships, that one of the things that we can do that we talked about in all of these situations is that when we reflect the inner worlds of the child or the person that we're with back to them, that creates a feeling felt. And that's what people need in terms of brain development and attunement and attachment. So by talking about what they need and recognizing what those needs are, or even saying, I'm not sure what you need, that's okay too, we may not know what it is, that's really important in our development and in our brains and in our relationship. The other thing that happens is we all were judged at some points or another for our temperaments. You're too talkative. Like if you had more introverted parents and you were a talker, you may have heard like, you gotta be quiet. Like, I'm tired, stop talking so much, right? Or judgment about that. So understanding yourself and your own experiences, and as they change over time and situational, and then what were the messages you received? Because those messages impact how you interpret the experience of the child in your life. Because we're always through that frame. And so there are ways in which if we were judged for being too quiet or shy or not outgoing enough, and if those parents are still in our lives with the children that we have, then they may, you may be worried about their judgments of a more introverted child. All of those things are going to impact and create anxiety for you. And just noticing that that's what's going on is a really critical part of the process. And that one is just, so that creates the challenges. Our own discomfort, that's usually what it is with the situation, is often the thing that we have to deal with most. So whether it's, feeling like I wish my daughter would just go into the group and that she didn't need somebody else to introduce her to the group, and we're uncomfortable with that because we want it to be easier. So I think those are the things to just think about in a general way as we think about our own experiences, what messages we received, how that impacts our interpretation of the children in our lives and their experiences, and even our fears about who they will become, how they will be judged, all of those things.
Quick question. Do you think in Abby's situation where she's feeling discomfort that her daughter's not walking in because maybe it creates a disruption to the class and maybe you're feeling that, would you recommend in any type of situation like that you as the parent talk to the teacher and say, hey, listen, you know what I mean? That way you get that need for, okay, it's okay if she's disrupting the class. That way you feel a little safer. Would you recommend having that conversation?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about that when not that everything's no, but I was thinking about a parent I work with who has two twins, that's obvious, has twin daughters that are 4. One is a low reactive, one's high reactive. One's more extroverted, one's more introverted. And they go to a preschool. And so she has talked quite a bit with the teacher about the introverted child. Like it's still really hot in Tucson, but the 1 4-year-old wants to wear her footed pajamas. And I said, so think about those footed pajamas as her armor. And she's like, we're trying to get her to change clothes. I said, don't. Take other clothes so once she gets into preschool and she's feeling more comfortable, if she wants to change, she can change. But if you think about the world being so big for her and so overwhelming, that whatever you can provide, that creates some armor. So they talk to the teacher. And the teacher's very supportive of that. I think if you have one that isn't, I would find another teacher, that isn't willing to come over, to bring the child in. But that's exactly what they did to advocate for what her needs were I mean, this teacher is pretty extraordinary. She sewed a little nest because the daughter calls herself Baby Owl. So she has an owl's nest, so she feels nested. You know, she takes time to transition. You know, those are all the things they've talked about. So I think advocating in systems, whether it's, you know, activities or classes or whatever it might be, is really helpful, especially when they can't express that themselves. And even if they can, if they're older, it's still helpful, because saying that to an adult, even though we've created a certain kind of relationship, it's hard for my 14-year-old to say what he needs to others that he's not comfortable with. So absolutely, yeah.
But in that situation, for example, like, kids might, I'm just thinking, like, people might make fun of her when she is there. And so as a parent, like, are you just, because, like, you've allowed her to go into that situation. So it's not you that's the negative, it's them that is the negative, and then you're there to comfort and to reinforce. Is that kind of how you deal with that?
Yeah. I think we do worry, especially if we experience teasing, we didn't fit, you know, there's lots of ways in which we worry, not even if it wasn't our own experience, about bullying or that sort of thing. I think what's most important is as you create that feeling of feeling felt, and you understand, and you help support what they need and advocate for those needs, that sets the foundation. It doesn't mean they won't be impacted negatively if somebody says, why are you wearing your footed pajamas, you know, to school? And at some point, maybe they won't let her wear her footed pajamas. That's another story, you know, that's another situation further down the line. But that's really it, is
Keeping the connection with your child.
the children in our lives are going to experience pain, they're going to experience rejection, they're going to experience disappointment. That is life. So the foundation that you create for them to understand themselves, and then to always be with them in those spaces and allow that to come forward, is really what's most important. And that's resilience. Understanding who you are, knowing who you are, and then coming from that point and having somebody you can always go to talk to. So it may happen, and we want to protect them.
But what do you do? Like, my daughter came home the other day and she said, am I mean? And I was like, why do you say what? And she's like, this girl said I was mean. And so I didn't know how to respond. So I'm like, well, you're not mean. I said, did you do something mean? Were your actions, you know, hurtful? Did you chance? You know, like things like, so she might be mean, like, or, you know. But, like, I just don't know, like, how, like, I need to talk, I need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your answer about this, because this happened to my daughter as well. We visited some distant family in Canada, and their daughter, who's my daughter's age, she was born the same week, told her that she was mean. And my daughter kept telling this to every person we met for at least 6 months. That was all she wanted to talk about, the fact that Lila said that she was mean. She just couldn't get over it, and it didn't matter how much we spoke about it and broke it into pieces and reassured her and supported her. It just wouldn't go. It really took 6 months for her, and she's still recovering.
If you think about from your own perspective, if someone has said something that hit you in the core, like you think about it for a long, like years, right? Years later, you're still thinking about that often. To me, her need to continue to talk about it is, I need to make sense. I need to make sense of this experience. So it could be that there was some pain and trauma attached to it, and so the talking through it is what helps her move through it, even if it takes 6 months. You know, that's what it may take. And for her to then test that out. This person said I was mean, I'm looking for what somebody else might say. She's asked, maybe saying it because she's wanting someone to say, no, you're not, whatever it is. You know, all of those things. Like she's verbally processing this experience, which was painful. And that's a powerful tool. a powerful tool, and it looks this way at this particular age and in the way that she needs to process it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
not to feel like we're not doing the right thing because she's still thinking about this.
I have someone in my life who's 9 who remembers things that I did when he was 3 that were painful. And so he still needs to process and remind me of those things. People work through the shit that they have in very many different ways.
You know, my 11-year-old the other day said something to me that just boggled my mind. She said, "It's like the time that you ate my grapes." I was like, what? And she described this time when she was like 2 or 3, and she had to go to the bathroom, and she asked me to hold her grapes, and she went to the bathroom, and she washed her hands, and she came back, and I had eaten her grapes. Now, apparently, and I have nothing. Apparently I got her new grapes, but it wasn't the big grape or whatever. She's 11, and she's still like, "Oh, Mom, it's like that time. I can't give this to you because do you remember that time? Like, I can't trust you with this because you remember." No, I don't remember that time. Like, all the millions of times you've trusted me since then don't count because when you were 2, I ate your grapes.
Yeah. So it may linger for a long
It
years.
takes me a while.
I'm on 6 years for something I did. It was very memorable for him and very offensive. So, yeah. I won't tell that story. Kathy and Justin probably know the story that I'm telling from another conference.
Oh, right.
I told the story. I was embarrassed after I told it. Other things.
I think I just got the aha, which I've never got along, is they're going to have their shit. And our job is just to be there and to listen and help them understand that it's okay. Is that basically what we're here for? We can't fix it.
Yeah.
Just be there.
We help create a container to hold all the shit. Really, that's it. Because shit happens.
But I'm not going to fix it.
We're full of it.
And we're full of shit. Sometimes it's our shit that we're holding the container for that they now are having to pile in there over and over.
Just
for
add
9
yours. I got mine.
We need somebody to dump this shit on.
Right. Yeah. That is it.
That's it. It's like, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I remember having this like aha moment when I was driving once, and I was like, wow, the whole point of life is to forgive and be forgiven.
Yeah.
Because if you remember constantly needing to be forgiven because you do horrible things, and then you're constantly having to forgive because people do horrible things to you. It's like the whole thing is just grace for everyone because we're all messed up.
And it's
easy.
Beautiful. It's
That
beautiful.
means we mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, this just made me connect back to my mom. I mean, there's things that my parents said to me when I was little that I still remember when things get bad.
Who doesn't?
And it's like, how long am I going to hang on to that? And it's like, so just bringing it back to our kids doing the same to us. It's like, it's like, they were just doing the best. I mean, that's where you gotta go, right? They were doing the best with what they had at the time, and that's what we're doing now. And we can't.
Someone ate their grapes.
Yeah, we can't. Exactly.
I can hear my grandchildren like coming up to me and being like, "Can you hold these for me?" I'll go ask somebody else because Mom told me about you.
I am not so interested.
The one thing I will say, not to point out Gavin, but I'm going to point out Gavin.
I love the eye roll. That is, yeah.
So there was something that happened, maybe this gives sort of, as we go through all this, something happened when Gavin was young and we were at a store. And he turned around and I wasn't there. I was blocked by the grapes apparently or something. But for years, he would not allow us to go. We couldn't go outside in the yard without him needing. It was like he had this moment, and we went through times where oh my God, he's going to be that way forever. And now he's fiercely independent. So I think about like,
I actually have a specific memory. It's not that.
Oh.
But so it's to this, like I like separation anxiety. It almost feels like a dream now. We were at a Chuck E. Cheese and I got separated from separated from them, and I panicked. I asked one of the people working there to
that's right.
go on the telecom or whatever and say like
Mom,
Mr.
Dad,
Sharkey, where are you? Because I freaked out. I still remember that. But that actually happened, right? Because because that's a different.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that like clearly you are independent. You don't need it's great that you're here, by the way, but but I say that to because I think that there just comes this time of working through stuff. And, sometimes it takes 30 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes 6. Sometimes it takes 6 months.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
I think it was Deepak Chopra, or no, Pema Chodron said, basically we will keep going back to whatever the experience until our soul learns what it means to learn. And so that may be an issue that we will be learning our entire lifetime, or it may be a 6-month issue. But we got to do what we got to do to learn all we can get, juice it for all eternity.
Are we complete?
Thank you.